Canada is closing in on 100,000 state-assisted deaths, if you can believe it. That's more than all the Canadians who fell in battle in World War II. In Australia, a woman made history by donating her organs after taking her own life. And in Spain, a 25-year-old woman who was not terminally ill won a court battle for the right to be euthanized. The culture of death is spreading at an alarming rate. Here with analysis of these stories and more, neuroscientist and senior ethicist at the National Catholic Bioethics Center, Father Tad Pacholczyk. Father Tad, so great to see you. This Canadian story is very distressing to me. Canada's Medical Assistance in Dying program, they call it MAID, is approaching 100,000 state-assisted deaths. Some 45 Canadians are now being euthanized every single day, Father. How did Canada get to this point from a narrowly passed law in 2016, which we talked about at the time, to what amounts to nationalized death machines in less than a decade?
Yeah, so I think it's remarkable. You mentioned MAID. These acronyms kind of drive me a little bit crazy. They also talk about VAD, voluntary assisted dying. And it's like, oh, voluntary. Oh, it's voluntary, therefore it's okay. All of these acronyms are sort of trying to pre-package a conclusion that something wrong is actually okay. And, my favorite one, though, I think you're going to be bringing this up about some of these individuals who are mentally ill, and they go and they request from the Canadian authorities to be euthanized, and this is sometimes permitted. Somebody came up with this brilliant phrase that I really like: medical homicide as psychotherapy.
So, yeah, that's really what it amounts to. I mean, when you break it down.
That's what it
Look,
amounts
critics
to.
of MAID's expansion, Father, they warned from the very beginning that eligibility criteria would creep to include terminal illness, chronic conditions, and mental illness. We see that in the case of that 26-year-old man who was approved for MAID because of diabetes, vision problems, and seasonal depression. His mother said she never thought any doctor would approve a 22-year-old for assisted suicide due to blindness. Well, is this not the slippery slope that the church was warning about?
Oh, totally. Totally. And, the way this is marketed, as you're aware, is to say, oh, don't worry, we have all kinds of controls in place. You have to go through review boards. You've got to get, second opinions from physicians. And it just goes on and on. But the reality is that as soon as you put any waiting periods in, they immediately expand it and say, no, you don't have to wait a month to do this. You can get it in 2 weeks. You can get it in a week if you're, and so this is where we are. We are on the very slippery slope. And in one sense, it might be pretty discouraging, I think, for people who've been watching the kind of march of an advance of death in such big societies as, Canada and ours. But on the other hand, I was encouraged recently. Scotland turned away assisted suicide. They voted against it. There was a referendum that came up, and their members, of the parliament voted it down. And then the other thing that impressed me was Slovenia, where Melania is from. They had legalized physician-assisted suicide, and then, believe it or not, they completely reversed it. And they had to go out, they had to gather, I don't know, it was 30,000 signatures. This was really hard to do. There's only 2 million people in that country. And they got it, and they reversed it, and now it's like, wow. So, this is not some kind of hopeless prospect. We have to all understand this is a serious issue that calls for action, calls for commitment to reversing these types of pressures that are being applied to us.
Well, and unless Americans think this is not happening here, it is. New York State just became the 14th state, to pass a version of assisted suicide. The New York State Catholic Conference called it a warning, called Canada a warning, and another stat I found so disturbing. In 2021, nearly 10,000 Canadians were euthanized. That same year, only 2,000 shelter dogs were put down there. Now, Father, what needs to be done to turn this around at this point? Is it too late for Canada? And will the U.S. eventually follow?
Well, Canada is going to be a hard nut to crack. I'm convinced. It's, it's gone pretty far down this road, and I think, but I do think something similar to, what happened in Slovenia has to happen there, in the sense that what they did in Slovenia was that they got all the churches together, and they said, will you guys support a referendum to overturn this unjust law? And then all the churches didn't sign up right away, but eventually they all got on board. Then they issued a common statement, and then they issued shared prayers. It was remarkable. It became a kind of groundswell. We need that kind of thing. We need some leadership and direction in Canada. Canada has, I think, a Catholic backbone still somewhere, And so even though
let's hope they find it. Look, in Australia recently, a 55-year-old woman dying of motor neuron disease underwent voluntary assisted dying and simultaneously donated her lungs, kidneys, and heart valve. She's being called the first person in the world to self-administer an assisted dying substance and then donate her organs. Why does the sequencing of these two decisions matter so profoundly, Father? And isn't this just another example of incentivizing death?
Absolutely. The incentivizing piece is there. It's like, look, if I can get some good out of this, help someone else. And she made this very argument as she was carrying it out. She jumped into a limousine with her 2 dogs and with her 2 daughters, went to the hospital, took the poison, killed herself, and then her organs were extracted. Raymond, this is so common sense. Anybody who proposes suicide as a way to get organs, it has to be an absolute exclusion, red line that cannot be crossed. And those organ procurement organizations and other groups that are involved with the process need to really come out and say this is unacceptable. This is not a way to get organs.
No, it's immoral. It's immoral and it's macabre. In Spain last month, a 25-year-old woman named Noelia Castillo, who was a paraplegic after a suicide attempt following a brutal assault, won a legal battle against her own father for the right to euthanasia under Spain's 2021 law. She was not terminally ill, Father. The U.S. State Department, by the way, is actually reviewing her case as a potential human rights violation. But when a young woman in despair is granted death rather than an option of healing, what has gone wrong with our understanding of human dignity?
Yeah, and what has gone wrong with the medical system? Because I think in a lot of places you feel like, gee, we've got to wait forever to see a specialist for my particular cancer or my particular heart disease or whatever. Wouldn't it just be easier and cheaper, heck of a lot cheaper to, these drugs to kill yourself for a few $100. And I think that the number crunchers are aware of this, and there's real pressure here to, make a quick exit. And this is unjust all the way up and down. The financial piece is real. In Slovenia, they used this, again, as an argument, and people were like, yeah, we've seen that. We've seen how inaccessible our own healthcare system can be and how expensive. And so obviously there's this real pressure. So
well, this is why everybody's marked, Father. Everybody, not only the frail elderly, all of us, no matter the condition we might find ourselves in, there is economic pressure to get rid of you quickly so as not to expend any funds in the health system, no matter where you are.
Well, absolutely. And I mean, you're pointing out so correctly that the disabled have a big target right on their back, and they know it. The disabled from the beginning of all of this have been saying, this whole idea of physician-assisted suicide or active euthanasia is just a total crock. And we're going to be caught in the crossfire of this. And they are. Yeah. They know it. Because they're not productive enough, supposedly. Here I am in my wheelchair, not doing much for the good of others, and so you can relegate me. And it's like, no, you're valuable, you're beautiful, you're important. Everyone with a disability is here for a reason in our Lord's beautiful plan. And so, I just think that's a message we've got to work on.
Yeah, when I hear these stories and read them, I think, look, we're all one false step on a curb or a slip out of the bed from being in that same position. So lest you sit there, oh, well, I'm fine. No, you're not. It can happen like that. We've seen it. Here's a deeply disturbing story out of Switzerland, Father. A 64-year-old American woman became the first person to use a suicide pod. and she died in a Swiss forest last year. Now, the pot is meant to flood the lungs with nitrogen gas. It's supposedly a peaceful and painless death. But a post-mortem found unexplained strangulation marks on her neck. The doctor on the scene was overheard on a phone call saying she's still alive. Father, what does this train wreck of a story tell us about the fantasy of a mechanized, distant, peaceful, solitary death? And is the church doing enough to oppose this kind of outfit and approach?
Well, I think it's a reminder that once you have yielded on the initial brakes on this, it's just a free fall. It really is. And, there's fascinating data where they interview those who do euthanasia in the Netherlands, and they ask the doctors, they say, hey, have you ever killed somebody who did not ask you to kill them? No consent. And the doctors are assured your answers will be kept confidential. And they say, oh yeah, I've done it many times. So, your story about the sarcopod and somebody maybe coming in and strangling her afterwards, one sees an immediate, powerful devaluation of the incredible, beautiful gift of human life. And it spins laterally out of control.
Well, and like something out of Agatha Christie, I'm being told that after that attack, and it looks like allegedly the doctor strangled her, that doctor then committed suicide. I mean, this is the problem with the culture of death. It breeds more death, and there's nothing good to be had there. A startup company, I'm going to end with this, in Richmond, California, R3 Bio, that's been operating in secrecy for years, has admitted to raising money to create non-sentient monkey organ sacs as an alternative to animal testing. MIT Technology Review reports that the founder has also pitched what he called brainless human clones, Father. So the idea would be you grow a copy of yourself without a functional cortex, you keep it alive on life support, and you harvest its organs when you need them. What is the Catholic teaching here, Father? Shouldn't there be moral and ethical limits on these kind of technological ambitions?
Yeah, I mean, Raymond, this goes back to discussions you and I had 20 years ago about therapeutic cloning. You may remember the idea there was, hey, create an embryo that's a match to me or to you, grow it a little bit, and then kill it for its stem cells and use those stem cells to make organs. So the same idea, just coming back in a different form. And there are additional problems with this proposal, which is that if you make these organ sacs of human beings, you are going to have to gestate them somehow. So they're talking about, surrogacy, having women carry these creatures, without a brain. And maybe even then some of the ones that would be produced could themselves become surrogates for further surrogates down, the road. Wow. So it just gets macabre and bizarre as people, I think at the end of the day, what's the pressure here? It's a sense of, hey, I don't ever want to die. I want to find a way here to live forever, which is a good aspiration, but you got to be very careful about the means that you choose to pursue that. And people are not being very circumspect or careful in that regard. They're just running after whatever, and in a sense, idolizing science and transhumanism and the powers of medicine in ways that they really shouldn't. It requires greater circumspection.
Father Tad, we could have called this segment Dr. Frankenstein Ain't Got Nothing on Us, but we'll leave it there for the moment. Father Tad Pacholczyk, thank you so much for being with us. And his commentary can be found at National Catholic Bioethics Center at their website, ncbcenter.org. Father Tad, always a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Raymond. Always a pleasure for me as well.